Soccer, football, calcio. It's the global sport. Kids play it in Peruvian mountain villages, in the streets of Lagos, Nigeria, and in the schoolyards of Hong Kong. An estimated 1.1 billion people tuned in to watch the most recent World Cup championship match between France and Croatia, about 1/7 of the population of the world. It's certainly not so entrenched in Canada, where I live, or in the United States, and it competes with cricket for the most popular sport in some former British colonies. But in most of the world, football is king. The sport is so universal that it often intersects with global events. It is no exaggeration to say that one can read 20th century world history through international soccer. A quick glance at nations that have been expelled from football confederations makes this clear. Apartheid South Africa was banned from the African Confederation for decades, and Israel was expelled from the Asian Football Confederation in 1974, when teams from predominantly Muslim nations refused to play against Israeli clubs. One of the major themes of the 20th century, European colonialism, is written all over world soccer. In 1974, just as the last African countries were winning their independence, Western racism and colonial dynamics erupted onto the biggest soccer stage of all, the World Cup. The 1974 World Cup in West Germany was the first time a black team made it to the finals. In fact, it was two black teams. The first sub-Saharan African team to make it to the World Cup was Zaire, now the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Haiti also qualified in 1974. Of course, these weren't the first black players to make it to the World Cup. Pelé had participated 4 times, as had other black players from Brazil and elsewhere. Actually, this wasn't even the first time a Haitian had played in the World Cup. The Haitian Joe Gaitjens had played for Team USA back in 1950, and had even scored a winning goal against England. But 1974 was the first time a majority black nation had made it to the finals. In sports history, both teams are remembered for their supposedly dismal performance in West Germany. Paul Dietschi's 2012 article refers to Zaire's disastrous campaign. In Tom Dunmore's Encyclopedia of the FIFA World Cup, he notes that Haiti's first and only World Cup appearance was in 1974, where they lost all 3 games, including a 7-0 defeat to Poland. In Paul Darby's book about soccer in Africa, he states that 1974 marked a relative low point in terms of the contribution of the underdeveloped nations to the game's premier international competition, with Zaire and Haiti losing each of their 3 games. And in Nick Holt's mammoth book of the World Cup, he claims that Haiti qualified for their first and probably last appearance. But do the two countries really deserve this reputation? If we simply look at the numbers, it does seem that there is little to brag about in their showings, which were, in fact, eerily similar. They both started with a 2-goal loss to a European nation from west of the Iron Curtain, Scotland and Italy, followed by a staggering defeat against an Eastern European country, Poland and Yugoslavia, and then ended with a 3-goal loss to one of the South American powerhouses, Brazil and Argentina. If we look behind the stats at the details, however, it becomes clear that their performance wasn't really as atrocious as sport historians suggest. In this video, I argue that the memories of the first 2 black teams in the World Cup were skewed by sports commentators who were writing in a historical context characterized by anxiety over the loss of Europe's centrality in world football and in world politics in general. First, let's look at how the teams were portrayed in the press before they even set foot in West Germany. For our purposes, it is useful to note that Australia was also making its debut at the World Cup. We can compare how the 3 teams were portrayed to get a sense of the expectations and prejudices. Bookies had listed all 3 teams as incredibly long shots to win the tournament, but the white Australians were given preferential treatment in the press. In a newspaper spread that summarized all 16 teams, the author said about Zaire, "No one is taking them seriously, what with a witch doctor on the sidelines and 3 plane loads of monkeys flown in to provide food. But they have incentives. When they reach the final round, President Mobutu gave each player a new house, a new car, and a 2-week all-paid vacation." The Haitian team, according to the same article, are in the World Cup because of geographical reasons, the best of a so-so lot in Central America and the Caribbean, although they themselves ascribe their success to the relaxation provided by voodoo. They'll be lucky to win 1 game. Both teams were depicted as outsiders who did not belong on the highest level of international competition. As for the other newcomers, the Australians, the same spread described them in glowing, hopeful terms, highlighting that, unlike Zaire and Haiti, these debutantes do belong. They're a Cinderella team, and it's an achievement just to be there. They're a mixture of natives, by which I don't believe the author means Aboriginal Australians, Englishmen, Scotsmen, Yugoslavs, and Germans, and if they get 1 tie, they'll be doing well. In other words, these newcomers don't pose a threat to Eurocentric football. So how did the teams actually do? In Game 1, both Zaire and Haiti did remarkably well. In their 2-0 loss to Scotland, Zaire nevertheless proved their mettle. The Scottish team admitted that it was a hard-won victory. Before the game, the Scottish manager Willie Ormond said, "Of course I think we will win, but there is no danger of us underestimating Zaire. We will go for as many goals as possible, for that is the only way we will make Brazil and Yugoslavia respect us." After the game, however, Ormond said, "Zaire surprised us with their second-half performance and are obviously a side for the future. In fact, they may well trouble both Brazil and Yugoslavia." Scottish midfielder Billy Bremner admitted that Zaire surprised us. They played better than we ever believed possible. The press also thought Zaire gave an impressive performance. French newspapers called it the most enjoyable game so far in the tournament, with one reporter saying, "We had to wait for the Zairians to provide a spectacle worthy of the great global competition." The African players justified both their reputation and their presence, while a Scottish commentator said, "I had thought that Zaire would be no more than sparring partners, but they showed that they had status in their own right, as they fought with great fun and sweeping long balls to test Scotland's defence to its limits." The Haitians also exceeded expectations in Game 1. Their keeper, Henri Francillon, pulled off a series of remarkable saves against the Italians, and was soon being scouted by a Brazilian club. But it was offensively that they really made a name for themselves. The Italian keeper was none other than Dino Zoff, who consistently ranks as one of the greatest of all time. Going into the '74 World Cup, Zoff was raking up a clean sheets record. He hadn't conceded a goal in over 1,100 minutes of international play. This record, which still stands to this day, came to an end 46 minutes into their match against Haiti, when the 22-year-old striker Emmanuel Sanon delivered a goal that has gone down in Haitian sports history. For the next 6 minutes, Haiti was ahead of one of the greatest teams in the world. The Italians turned it around for a 3-1 victory, but the Haitians sent a clear message that they were by no means out of their league. In short, both teams started off with an impressive showing in West Germany. Unfortunately, things went downhill for them after that. 4 days after their close match against Scotland, Zaire met Yugoslavia. It was a massacre, with Yugoslavia scoring a staggering 9 goals. Haiti likewise suffered a 7-0 defeat against Poland. The results of their third matches were more typical. Both teams lost by 3 goals. These scores are less informative because Haiti and Zaire were already eliminated, and Brazil and Argentina just needed to win by a few goals in order to move on to the next round. It is worth noting, however, that Mano Sanon managed to score another goal against Argentina. Haiti scored a goal against the 3rd and 9th best teams in the world. And, as of 2020, when I'm making this video, Haiti has more World Cup goals than El Salvador, Togo, Iraq, Bolivia, Israel, Angola, the Democratic Republic of Congo, China, Indonesia, Trinidad and Tobago, and Canada. Okay, let's move along here. Leaving Game 3 aside then, we need to ask whether Game 1 or Game 2 best represents the players' abilities. History remembers the crushing defeats in Game 2, but there is reason to believe that Game 1 is more representative. The performance of both teams in Game 2 was hampered by things that took place off the field. Before the Zaire-Yugoslavia match, President Mobutu decided to pull their coach, Blagoje Vidic, who happened to be Yugoslavian, for fear that he was selling secrets to his compatriots. The team had to rely on the ad hoc directives of Mobutu's officials. Likewise, Haiti's most embarrassing defeat has convincingly been blamed on their own president's machinations. After the match against Italy, a random drug test on midfielder Ernst Jean-Joseph showed positive. Jean-Joseph, for his part, claimed that the result was due to a combination of drugs he was taking for asthma. But in the first punitive action for doping in World Cup history, Jean-Joseph was kicked out of the tournament and banned from international soccer for 1 year. But it was the actions of their furious president, Jean-Claude Duvalier, that were most troubling for the team. On his orders, Jean-Joseph was roughed up by Haitian officials, thrown on a plane, and sent home in disgrace. Haitian defender Fritz André later recalled, "As successful footballers, we'd been protected from that side of the regime, but now we saw the dark side. We had a sleepless night before the game against Poland, and to be honest, I was only thinking about Ernst, not the game." In short, both teams had the unfortunate experience of somehow falling afoul of their dictatorial governments in the midst of their World Cup campaigns. It was a tragic coincidence that forever marked the legacy of their time in West Germany. After Game 2, commentators were quick to resume the earlier message that Haiti and Zaire did not belong on the highest stage of football. While the Zairian players had justified both their reputation and their presence in their match against Scotland, and the Haitians had shocked the world by ending Zoff's clean sheet, after Game 2, reporters began to refer to an abyss between the standards of the best in Europe and the best in Africa. Zaire and Haiti, one commentator noted, don't really belong in this grade of competition. Another listed the teams that had been eliminated from the competition in the group stage, saying, out of the tournament are Australia, Zaire, and Haiti, the last two an embarrassment to a series endowed with so much talent. But had Australia done much better? They managed a draw against Chile, but lost against East and West Germany, and unlike Haiti, they never scored a goal. What is really surprising is how high up these disproportionate denunciations went. It wasn't just commentators and fans that pointed at the losses to say that Haiti and Zaire didn't belong. It went all the way up to the top of football administration. UEFA President Artemio Franchi proposed changes to the qualifiers in order to keep developing nations out. In the wake of crushing defeats for Zaire and Haiti, Franchi questioned whether it was necessary for a developing continent to have automatic representation in the Cup finals, saying the kind of results these teams get when they play the world's top sides once in 4 years are not of much use. And the outgoing president of FIFA, Sir Stanley Roos, believing that the Zairian and Haitian losses devalue the currency of a World Cup, planned to table a proposal that henceforth the World Cup qualifying tournament would take place on an intercontinental and not geographical basis, which would help to separate the sheep from the goats in the early stages. The Game 2 scores were certainly an embarrassment to the losing teams, but it was not as if World Cup audiences had never witnessed a crushing defeat. In 1954, Scotland lost 7-0 to Uruguay. Sweden beat Cuba 8-0 in 1938, but then they lost 7-1 to Brazil 12 years later. There have also been shattering defeats since 1974, but I somehow doubt anyone was calling for the restructuring of World Cup qualifiers to keep Brazil out after their 7-1 loss to Germany in 2014. So what was going on in 1974? If we want to understand the backlash against Haiti and Zaire, the historical context is critical. At the start of the 20th century, Western Europe was in many ways the center of the world, but by 1974, global political and economic centers had moved to the United States and the Soviet Union, and, with the loss of their African and Asian colonies, Europe had become parochial. Football was one of the few domains where Europe still led the world. FIFA is based in Switzerland, and every president since its founding had been a European. Just 2 days before the 1974 World Cup began, however, FIFA elected a new president, the Brazilian João Havelange. Europeans saw his election as a symptom of Europe's loss of centrality in world football. The incumbent president, the Englishman Sir Stanley Roos, said to European members during his campaign, "I appeal to you to vote for me because it is Europe versus South America, and we want Europe to retain the leadership of football." And if he were elected, he said they should begin looking for a European successor so that this European leadership is maintained. But Havelange won. He did so mainly by courting votes in the underdeveloped world. In 1957, only 4 African nations were FIFA members. By 1974, there were 38. This was a significant voting bloc. Havelange did the math and realized if he won Africa, he would win the presidency. He toured the continent extensively with his compatriot Pelé and promised a massive football development program. A key part of his platform was to add slots to the World Cup finals and give more of them to non-Western nations. This latter proposition scandalized European football. Louis Wouters, the president of the Belgian Football Association, said, "In the finals this year we have Zaire, Haiti, and Australia. If we increase the number of finalists to 20, there will be 1 extra place for Europe. If this is what you want, the organization of a world championship where the Soviet Union, Czechoslovakia, England, Spain, and Belgium are not taking part in the final, I would rather be a European champion than champion of the world." The West German team's captain, Franz Beckenbauer, said, "For me, a World Cup without England is not a real World Cup at all. For Haiti and Zaire to be coming here and not England does not make sense." And the Italian captain said, "I think the competition should be for the best 16 teams, no matter where they come from, and we should forget these arguments about fostering the game in little countries by encouraging them to play." Conversely, as a delegate to the 1978 FIFA Congress argued, one of the major means by which the standard of the game could be developed is the creation of incentives, the best of which, as far as Asian and African teams are concerned, would be to give them the opportunity for more than one team to qualify to the World Cup finals. Asian and African sides have certainly distinguished themselves against European teams since then. But in 1974, the European football community wasn't interested in having this conversation. A Brazilian president of FIFA was one thing. Diluting the game with outsiders would be going too far. So, when Haiti and Zaire came to the World Cup just days after Havelange was elected, a lot was riding on their performance. Before they even set foot on the fields, European footballers had already made up their minds about who belonged. For them, It was a stroke of luck that the two teams happened to do so poorly in one of their 3 games. Despite Sanon's famous goal and Zaire's impressive showing against Scotland, the memory of the first 2 black teams at the World Cup was a casualty of European attempts to protect their privileged position in world football. More broadly, European backlash against the Haitian and Zairean sides at the '74 World Cup is emblematic of the continent's crisis of identity following decolonization. For the record, things are remembered differently in Haiti and Zaire themselves. Here, the 1974 World Cup is not remembered as an unequivocal embarrassment. Both countries are proud of their team's success at qualifying.
Alors, nous vous proposons l'histoire de notre équipe nationale, celle qui a été sélectionnée à la Coupe du Monde de football en 1974.
Vive Léopard!
La première d'Afrique noire à y aller. Non, ce n'était pas le Cameroun et ses lions indomptables, c'était nous avec les léopards.
Many of the players actually went on to play for European teams. Emmanuel Sanon, for his part, joined the pantheon of Haitian sports. You can still see murals bearing his face in Port-au-Prince today. He was buried with state honors when he died in 2008, and his family received a lifetime pension along with the rest of the 1974 squad. In other words, an event and a memory are 2 different things. The memory of an event depends on who is doing the remembering, and is influenced by the way the event is depicted at the time. It is important to go back and disentangle memory from truth, so that false narratives like Zaire and Haiti's failure at the 1974 World Cup don't live on and continue to reinforce racist ideas. This has been Matt Robertshaw with Sleeper Hit History, and remember, keep learning.